I still remember the exact moment my father called my entire year's work garbage. The word echoed in the cramped office, bouncing off the cheap fluorescent lights, sinking into my skin like acid. I'd spent 12 months buried in that project. Late nights, skipped meals, relentless effort. But to him, all that mattered was control. He stood over my shoulder, broad and unyielding. The rest of the team clustered behind him like nervous shadows. My hands hovered over the keyboard, sweat pooling in my palms. I had just finished the presentation, the numbers, the models, all lined up in a way I thought would finally make him proud. Instead, he barely glanced at the screen before making a dismissive noise, the kind that cut deeper than any insult. "Is this really what you've been wasting your time on?" he said, voice cold enough to frost glass. He didn't even bother to sit, just jabbed a finger at the monitor, shaking his head. "This is garbage. You're wasting company resources and my patience." The others stared at their shoes, no one daring to speak. My heart thudded so loudly I thought everyone could hear it. I wanted to defend myself, to scream at him for once, but I just stood there, mute, every muscle locked. He leaned in, took the mouse, and with a final look of contempt, hit delete. My entire project gone. Just like that. The presentation slides, the spreadsheets, the code, the files I'd named with tiny hopes for the future, all vanished in less than a second. Silence followed, thick and electric. I caught my reflection in the blacked-out screen, pale and expressionless. Everyone waited for my reaction. I knew what they expected, maybe tears, maybe rage, maybe begging for another chance. But I did nothing. Not a word, not a tear. I stood still as a statue, feeling the humiliation and betrayal boiling under my skin. My father straightened his suit jacket, looking satisfied, as if deleting my work was a lesson well taught. I felt their eyes on me, waiting for the outburst, the breakdown, the proof that he could still control me. Instead, I simply nodded, my voice quiet but steady. Understood. Inside, though, something snapped. If he thought he'd broken me, he was wrong. I felt the humiliation twisting into something sharper, something that almost felt like resolve. I didn't storm out, didn't shout or slam doors. But right there, in that moment of public destruction, I made a silent vow. I was done letting him have that kind of power over me. He thought he'd erased everything. He didn't know what I'd kept hidden. He didn't know what was coming next. As everyone returned to their routines, pretending not to notice the wreckage left behind, I sat quietly at my desk. But inside, everything had changed. I would never let him do this to me again. That I don't remember sitting down. I don't remember picking up my phone. All I remember is the rush of blood in my ears and the tight, metallic taste in my mouth as I stared at the empty computer screen, everything I'd built now a void. That's when my phone rang, shrill, jarring, slicing through the stunned silence. I nearly jumped. For a second, I thought about letting it go to voicemail. Then I saw the name flash on the screen, Callahan Industries. My pulse kicked up again, but this time it was something else, an old, familiar surge of hope. I stood up, quietly excusing myself, the humiliation still clinging to me like a second skin as I left the room. I stepped into the hallway, trying to keep my voice steady. "Hello." I barely recognized my own voice. "Is this Alex?" a crisp voice asked. "This is Marissa Callahan. I hope I'm not catching you at a bad time." "No," I said, swallowing hard. It's actually perfect timing." She didn't bother with small talk. "We were impressed with what you sent over last month. I wanted to talk to you directly. I'm prepared to make you a formal offer to join our team. I know this might seem abrupt, but we value initiative. And frankly, your work is exactly the direction we need to go. If you're interested, the starting salary would be $600,000 with a signing bonus. Full creative control. It's yours if you want it." $600,000. I actually laughed, a sharp, disbelieving sound. I must have sounded crazy, but I couldn't help it. All the worthlessness my father tried to drill into me vanished for a moment, replaced by something bright and electric. I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to focus, to make sure I wasn't dreaming. I looked through the glass door at my father, still holding court, convinced he'd won. Everyone else's heads were down. None of them would ever know how close they came to being on my side. My father had always made sure of that. "I accept," I said, my voice low but clear. No hesitation. Marissa let out a soft, satisfied sound. "I'll send the paperwork this afternoon. Welcome to the team, Alex." When I hung up, My hands were trembling, not from fear, but from the wild realization that, for the first time in my life, I held all the cards. My father had just erased my work, thinking he was erasing me. He didn't know I'd been building something far more valuable than a project. I'd been building an exit. And now, I had one. I lingered in the hallway, staring at the phone in my hand. It felt heavier than before, as if it contained everything I'd ever wanted to say but never could. For the first time, the sting of humiliation started to fade, replaced by a simmering pride. He could take away my files, but not my worth. I glanced at the door, knowing what I needed to do next. For once, I wasn't afraid that I walked back into the office with my head held higher than it had been in months. The atmosphere was heavy. Everyone kept their eyes on their screens, pretending not to notice the aftermath of my father's outburst. But I could feel their curiosity, their discomfort, all those secret glances they thought I wouldn't catch. I paused by the conference table where my father sat, still acting like he was the only one who mattered. I let the silence thicken, just long enough for him to look up at me with his usual expectation of submission. This time, I didn't give it to him. I just got off the phone with Callahan Industries, I said, letting the words drop into the room like stones in still water. They've made me an offer. $600,000, in full creative control. I accepted. For a second, nobody spoke. It was as if I'd started speaking in a language none of them understood. My father blinked, his mouth opening just a fraction, confusion and disbelief etched into his face. All those years of being underestimated, dismissed, used. I could see them flash across his features as he tried to process what I'd said. "You what?" he managed finally, voice hoarse. "You're joking." I shook my head. "No, I'm not." "The work you deleted?" "They wanted it. That's what they called about." "I'm leaving, effective immediately." A wave of whispers rippled through the room. A couple of people gasped, hands flying to mouths. Others just stared, wide-eyed, like they were watching a car crash they couldn't look away from. My father stood up so abruptly his chair slammed against the wall, the thud echoing across the office. "You can't just," he started, voice rising, but I cut him off with a calm I'd never felt before. "I can. I did. You made your feelings clear. So did they." I let the silence sit. I wanted him to feel it. The reversal, the realization that he no longer controlled the outcome. For once, I was the one calling the shots. I could see the questions forming in his mind, panic blooming behind his eyes. But I didn't care. Not anymore. Someone in the back, someone who'd always been quietly supportive, let out a short, amazed laugh. That was all it took to break the tension. People started to murmur, the room coming alive with energy and disbelief. I turned and started packing up my things, hands steady, each motion deliberate. I made sure to look everyone in the eye, just once, so they'd remember this moment. I wasn't the failure my father had painted me to be. I was the person they would wish they'd stood behind as I gathered my things. I caught her face out of the corner of my eye, Claire. She was always the quiet one, the shadow behind my father's spotlight, the one who nodded at his orders without question. But when I spoke those words about the offer, her expression shifted. Her face went white, as if someone had just knocked the wind out of her. It was a slow, terrifying change, like the color was draining from her skin and leaving only fear behind. Claire's eyes widened, her lips parted, but no sound came out. She looked like she was trying to process a storm rolling in too fast to outrun. The shift in her gaze told me everything. She understood exactly what my acceptance meant. Not just for me, but for the entire team, for her, for the delicate balance of power they'd all relied on for so long. I saw panic flicker behind her eyes, regret, maybe, or the realization that whatever plans she'd had were unraveling. I wondered for a moment if she'd been the one whispering doubts to my father all these years, the quiet saboteur behind his thunder. Or maybe she was just scared of the consequences, scared of the chaos I was about to unleash. But she didn't say a word. Instead, she turned away, clutching her folder tightly against her chest, like it was a shield. She didn't meet my eyes. I knew she was already calculating what this meant for her future, her standing, her loyalty to the man who had just lost his grip on everything. Her silence was louder than any scream. It told me this wasn't just about me walking away. It was about the collapse of an entire world she thought was unshakable. And deep down, I could tell she feared what came next as much as I did. That moment, the look on her face, felt like a warning and a confirmation all at once. I was about to change everything. I just didn't know yet if she would become an enemy or an ally. The silence that followed Claire's pale face broke like a dam. Suddenly, the room shifted. People who had been holding their breath started whispering, shuffling papers, exchanging quick, nervous glances. The gravity of what was happening settled in like a thick fog. My departure wasn't just a personal blow, it was a seismic shift that rattled the entire foundation of the team and the company. My father's usual commanding presence crumbled before my eyes. He slammed a fist on the table, trying to regain control, but his voice lacked its usual conviction. "This is a mistake, Alex," he barked, desperation creeping in. "You don't understand what you're throwing away." I met his gaze steadily. "I understand perfectly. I'm done being thrown away." Others tried to intervene. Some pleaded with me to reconsider. Others scrambled to patch the cracks forming around us. But the damage was done. My leaving wasn't just a resignation, it was a declaration. I was reclaiming something he never gave me, the respect I earned. The tension turned electric, edges sharp with resentment and disbelief. Yet through it all, I remained calm, unmoved by their chaos. The humiliation and anger I had carried for so long finally began to dissolve, replaced by a quiet strength that surprised even me. I packed the last of my things slowly, deliberately, savoring each moment. When I walked out of that office for the last time, I wasn't just leaving a job. I was walking away from a lifetime of control and judgment. As the door clicked shut behind me, I felt a strange kind of freedom settle in. The father who tried to erase me was now watching the back of someone who refused to be erased. And that thought alone was enough. The day I walked into Callahan Industries felt surreal. I'd been carrying the weight of rejection for so long. I wasn't sure how to stand without it pressing down on me. But the moment I met Marissa and the team, something shifted. They greeted me not with skepticism or judgment, but with anticipation, as if they'd been waiting for exactly what I had to offer. When I laid out the ideas from the project my father had deleted, every chart, every plan, every concept, I saw their eyes light up. They saw potential where my old team saw failure. Where my father saw garbage, they saw a blueprint for success. Marissa smiled, the kind of genuine smile I hadn't seen in years. "This is exactly what we need," she said. "You're not just joining us, Alex. You're leading us." I felt confidence bloom inside me, a quiet but unstoppable force that filled every corner of doubt I'd ever held. Here, my work wasn't something to be destroyed. It was something to be built on, celebrated, and taken further than I'd ever imagined. Signing the contract was more than a formality. It was a rebirth. I wasn't just starting a new job. I was reclaiming my worth and creating something that was truly mine. That night, lying in a hotel bed miles away from the place that tried to break me, I realized I hadn't just escaped. I'd been vindicated. The future wasn't something I was waiting for anymore. It was something I was shaping, one deliberate step at a time. Months passed. The project we built at Callahan Industries wasn't just a success. It was a revolution. Clients called us the innovators. The press wrote about our bold new vision. Every day I saw proof that what I had created, what my father had erased, was not garbage at all. It was gold. Back at the old company, I heard whispers. The team floundered without me. Deadlines slipped, profits dropped. My father's iron grip loosened, his authority crumbling like dry stone. One day, I caught a glimpse of him in a news story, pale, bitter, watching from the sidelines as the company he once ruled was eclipsed by the very thing he tried to destroy. I felt no joy in his downfall, only the calm satisfaction of justice served in silence. I didn't gloat or look back. The door I closed behind me was locked tight, a reminder that respect and value could never be taken by force. They had to be earned and protected. My legacy wasn't shaped by his approval. It was carved from my refusal to be silenced, erased, or controlled. I learned the hard way that sometimes you have to lose everything to find who you really are, and that the greatest revenge is living well on your own terms.